In this lesson, I'll take you through how to get started with ragtime blues in 3 steps. Let's get to it. Hey, John here with the Blues Guitar Institute, and this is your Tuesday Blues, where every single week we take a cool acoustic blues concept and we break it down into a simple, straightforward lesson just like this one. And if you're into ragtime blues, that sound that you just heard, this lesson is for you. We're going to break it down into really 3 main steps to take to really get your ragtime blues picking chops up to snuff. So let's get into it. First up, you've got to know the progression. Ragtime blues can be full of these crazy twists and turns in the chord progression. So sometimes they don't quite make sense if you're coming from a background of, strumming along with some acoustic tunes, or even if you're kind of studied in theory. If you know your diatonic chord theory, you're not going to expect an A7 to follow a C major. Now, I talked a little bit about why this does make sense back in Tuesday Blues number 266, and I highly encourage you to check that out. But the first step for me has always been to just strum through the chord changes and learn them. Even if you don't understand them, just make sure that you get this down before you try to add any other complications like we're going to see in step 2 and 3 when it comes to learning a ragtime blues piece. Let's put this into action. We'll strum through a 4-bar snapshot of a typical ragtime blues progression. We'll strum through a 4 count for the C chord, another full measure for an A7, and then we're going to split measure 3 between a D7 and a G7, so 2 beats each before going back, and on the 4th measure let it hang on C for a full measure. Okay, so that will sound like this: 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. And you can hear, even just playing through the chords, there's kind of this melody that's inbuilt just in playing through these open position chords. You can hear that ragtime sort of sound coming out of just these chord changes. Step 2 is to take a very basic finger picking pattern and run it through these chord changes. So you might play something like, okay, even though we're calling this a basic finger picking pattern, there's still quite a lot of skill that goes into pulling this thing off. Not the least of which is you've got to get your thumb doing its thing. And we started off with this 3-string sort of Travis picking style of alternating bass. And that's pretty difficult. You're traveling over the strings, and we're going to get into some exercises in future Tuesday Blues lessons that will help you really nail that and get that motion down to help you do that slightly more complicated alternating bass. But then in measure 2, you may have seen we just alternated between the 5th and the 4th string. A little easier, maybe a whole lot easier even, to tackle before doing a 6/4 bass and a 6/4 bass. But the point is that is embedded in this pattern. So you can focus on just the alternating bass and really work on that, and it will help the top part, the treble notes, come into focus a little bit easier. But back to this little basic finger picking pattern, we did the alternating bass, but then on top it was really just a couple of pinches with the B. So on beat 2 and 3, and we did that holding down the chord, not doing any sort of melodic movement here. First string, first string, first string, first string. And that first string that I'm calling out is really just that one melody note that changes depending on what chord you're on. All right. But we want to take this a bit further to really give some life to it. And that's step 3. We're going to add in some melody notes that really make this come together as a ragtime sounding piece. All right, before we bring this together and let you hear the example played fully intact, I've got a question for you. Leave a comment below and let me know which of these 3 steps would give you the most struggle. Is it learning the chords? Is it actually putting a finger picking pattern into the chord progression, or is it adding something cool and snappy in the melody on top? Let me know, comment below. All right, so you can hear in this example, we're moving the melody just a little bit. We're playing on the first string still, but we're adding some different notes that really are kind of right under your finger. So I think this is an excellent little tune, a little snippet of a ragtime influenced progression to get you started in this style of blues, because the notes, there's nothing crazy happening here on the fretboard. This to me is really targeting your picking skills. And what we're going to do is simply play with that first string. The G note on the first string is right here, ready for the pinky to just kind of land there. And then we're just toggling between that and the open. All right, and so that's really done on beat 2 and then beat 3. But on 3, we do eighth notes in the melody. So it's, all right, so there's a pinch with the 2 outer strings, and then we put down and pluck that G note on the first string by itself before letting the bass return to the 4th string. All right, so here's the first measure. Then we change chords and we keep that pattern mostly the same, but we get into this long A position. So now instead of A7, we're going to move the melody along a little bit by reaching up and grabbing the high A on the first string, 5th fret. Okay, and then we play much with that same bass, but this time we're doing 5th string, 4th string alternating, and the melody notes happen in that same sort of rhythmic space. Right? So we've got a pinch, then a pinch, and then a plug. On the bass, we're splitting that last beat between the bass and plucking up on the A note there. Just a cool little filler note, okay? So it's adding a little bit to this feeling that we've gotten. It kind of propels us forward a little bit as we change into the D chord. Now I'm playing this with my thumb over the bass. You could refinger this and play it with a different fingering if the thumb is a little bit uncomfortable for you, but you might want to try doing that. I use this all the time in acoustic blues, and it's really handy when you've got your thumb taking care of some of the fretting duty, because then it gives you some latitude with your fingers. It frees up a finger that would otherwise be playing that F sharp. Hope that makes sense to you. But for this example, just make sure you're catching that F sharp in the bass, and our bass is gonna fly by. Really, it's just 2 beats, 1, 2, before moving into our G7. So all we're gonna do melodically on this D7 chord is pinch on beat 2, before pinch, and then on that and of 3, just like before, we're gonna play another melody note on the 2nd string, this time, same as with the A7. So we get to that G7, bass, little filler note, same pattern as before, and then we wrap things up in C. And here I'm planning on that G. Kind of brings this home. It sounds really good. So hopefully these 3 steps help you, right? First thing is you got to know the chords when they're coming up, and then from there we want to just apply a picking pattern. Now these can get fancier as you become more advanced and more adept at picking out some more complicated patterns, but keep it simple, much like our example in the beginning. And for step 3, you take that one little tiny step forward by adding some melody notes. And the cool thing is, right here in this area of the fretboard, when you're picking along with these open position chords, there's so many notes that are just right under your fingers. And we highlighted a couple of these in the example. Okay, yes, this is a very linear approach to putting together a cool little snippet of a ragtime blues. But sometimes we need to take things step by step. You don't have to see the entire complicated blind blade picking that's going on. Sometimes you just need to take the step that's right in front of you, and that's what this lesson is designed to help you do. Break it down into these core elements and see just how far you can get, taking it slowly and one little chunk at a time. I hope you found this useful. If you did, there's so much more going on inside the premium membership for BGI. We've got cool ragtime bass courses like one that just came out called Georgia Blues. We've got licks coming out every single month and an awesome community of like-minded pickers just waiting to give you some feedback, encouragement, a helping hand, or just talk some cool blues. So check out premium membership at the link in the description, and I'll see you in the next Tuesday Blues lesson. Until then, practice smart and play on.